Pastor Scott. Thanks for being here. So on Sunday, I had offered a talk to individuals that were interested in learning about the stained glass at the church. It started out with the Sunday school kids, but we got some adults too. And some other people said they kind of wish that they had been able to attend or weren't able to attend for one reason or another. So I'm doing the same talk virtually, and I hope that you'll be blessed by it to talk about the symbolism and the meaning behind the stained glass, particularly in Wesley Church, but it'll be applied for any church. One thing that I want to say before we get started, taking pictures of stained glass is really, really hard to get good color, to get good lighting. So I apologize in advance if some of the pictures don't come out the best, but we'll start there. So the first thing, and probably the most important thing that I want you to come away with, recognize and understanding, is all summed up with this one picture I'm about to show you. Now, looking at this picture, you know that this means McDonald's. And it doesn't say McDonald's anywhere on the picture, but that symbolism, that logo is so ingrained into our being and our culture that you instantaneously know what this logo means. And it's the same for stained glass. We are trying to speak a language that was written 500, 1,000 years ago. And so we've lost some of the language, we've lost some of the meaning, we've lost some of the words, if you will, on what those mean. But for the original audience, those stained glass windows told a whole story. They told the Bible story. One more thing. If you look at this four-leaf clover, and if I ask you what it meant, you might say it means St. Patrick's Day. You might mean it means luck. You might mean, some might just be Ireland. Some pictures, some images have more than one meaning. And based on your culture or your age or how you're feeling that day or whatever, you may get different reactions from a particular picture. And that happens in stained glass too. As close as there is to a hard and fast language, there's still also artistic interpretation. There's, the time of when it was written, what country was the stained glass made in and such. So it's not an exact science, but we can get pretty darn close, and we can get some really good lessons and some biblical stories from the art of the church. And I had some kids in the group when we were running through it, and so I put up the slide about what's the word. It means apple, right? And the idea that people can read is a relatively new thing in the history of mankind. Only really the last, say, 150 years that people were able to start to read. Only 400, 500 years ago that the Gutenberg press came out. So the idea of reading, the idea of teaching had to come from other ways, and it came through oral tradition, so people retelling and telling the stories. And it also came from the art of the church. And the entirety of the church was to create awe, a sense of wonder, and to teach those Bible stories so that people would remember, using language and symbolism that they would know instinctively at the time. So when you go into an older church, you will see paintings that depict different scenes from the Bible that may or may not be related to each other. This is from a chapel in the cathedral in Porto, Portugal. And each one of those panels is a little scene. And here's one that has St. Michael and the devil battling each other. But that would help tell the story of those that were looking at it, that good is going to beat evil in the end. They would also regularly use statues. This is a statue of St. James. And I'm going to talk about St. James last, because we do have a St. James window in our church, but I'll talk about him last because I'll go on a little bit longer if you're interested in the history of St. James. But they would use a lot of statues. as well. And if you look behind, the country of Portugal loved to use painted tiles to also depict stories or just to create awe or wonder in the churches as well. So some churches would have this blue and white tiles just all over the front of the church, all over the walls inside. It's absolutely gorgeous. This is another painted tiles that are telling a story, again, of St. James. And you'll notice St. James has a seashell on his hat and a seashell on the sign, and he always says seashell, and again, I'll talk about why. This is the Cathedral of Santiago in Santiago de Compostela. This is the supposed burial place of St. James the Apostle, as the church believes. And you can see this is gold and silver foil on top of the statue. There's angels holding up the throne of heaven, and as higher up you go, the closer you get to heaven, and it's awe-inspiring. It truly is. And that was its intent, to talk about and demonstrate God's glory and God's majesty and God's power through the artwork and the church itself. But we're here to talk about stained glass. And so sometimes the stained glass is more abstract. Sometimes it is more characters. Sometimes it's more symbols. But every part of the stained glass tells a story. This is also from the cathedral in Porto, Portugal. And I'll zoom in here. So in the center is Mary. Mary is always, always, always in blue. And the reason that Mary was in blue was the church believed that Mary had an extra special place. And they would use a stone called lapis lazuli. I don't know. You can correct me on what the spelling is on Sunday. Which is a precious, semi-precious stone from Afghanistan. They would crush it up, make a color called ultramarine, and they would save that color especially for Mary. So even if there's blues, this is a more modern stained glass, so that blue kind of leaked out into other spaces. There's 8 panels around the side. 8 stands for unity. It's a little bit harder to see, but the 4 corners, which could represent north, south, east, west, I don't know, but they are the 4 gospel writers. And I know that because of the symbols that are with the gospel writers. So starting on the far right, that is St. Luke, because Luke always has a bull accompanying him. So if I see stained glass, if I see somebody scribbling on some paper and there's a bull behind him, I know that's St. Luke. And early Christians would know that as well, and that would help them remind them, oh yeah, Luke wrote one of the Gospels. At the top is St. John. John always has an eagle. On the far left is St. Matthew. He always has a human or an angel kind of with him, usually a human. And at the bottom is St. Mark, and it's kind of hard to see because the pipe's on the organ, but he always has a lion with him. And so if you've ever been to Venice or seen pictures of Venice, you'll see lots of lions all over the place because Mark is the patron saint of Venice as well. Colors matter. Like I said, blue was always reserved for Mary. So if you saw blue, you kind of knew it was Mary. But blue also indicates heaven or indicates, I'm not 100% on all theirs. And that, as I was doing my research, I found a lot of different ideas on what colors meant as well. So when we get to our stained glass, I'll talk a little bit about those colors specifically, but know that not only shapes matter, pictures matter, but colors matter as well. One more that I wanted to show real quick. Sometimes the stained glass would have multiple things going on, and if you count the people around the edges, you get 12. How about that? With a dove in the center, that reminds me of the story of Jesus coming out of the waters, his baptism. Here's the dove that descended on him. And what would often happen in stained glass as well is the higher up you are vertically on the stained glass, it would signify your closeness to heaven. So you notice the angels are up on top. Angels could have been down here with the disciples, but they're also up on top. And this is, again, a more modern piece of glass. I think this one was from Madrid. Sometimes the stained glass is just obvious storytelling. And this one is the story of Elijah and Elisha, as Elijah heads into heaven on the flaming chariot, and his apostle, his disciple, is sad that he's leaving. So they would have stories that would directly tell you the Bible narrative to help you learn, because they couldn't read, remember? So this would help them tell the story. Well, what's going on here? Oh, this is the prophet being taken up to heaven. And sometimes they'd have a whole bunch of stories going on at the same time that kind of overwhelms the senses. And I think that that's part of the intent, is to pack in as much as they can, not only because space is a premium, but also to give you a sense of overwhelming on how much history, how much biblical story there is going back. And so you've got Jesus on the cross, Jesus teaching. I'm not even sure what all the panels are, but well, down at the bottom right, it looks like maybe it was Jesus as a little boy in the tabernacle teaching. There's one with at the center left is the three kings, and then center right is Mary and Joseph receiving the gift. So again, all these to kind of teach the story of Jesus. And last one, this one and the one before are from England, from the Wesley Chapel in Epworth, I believe. And so, I'm the good shepherd, he knows my sheep. 100% teaching you the Bible story. And so age also matters as well. So I'm switching now. These are the pictures from our chapel at the church. And this is the first one I want to talk about. And I asked the kids, well, what do you think this one means? Because I think this is the easiest one to kind of interpret for us. With the red heart, kind of makes you think of Valentine's. It definitely makes you think of love. And there's a plaque at the bottom of all the windows in the chapel. And this one is called the love. It's called love. Red in stained glass usually stands for sacrifice or love, the blood of Christ. And so that's why, the heart is basically red. There's a little bit of other colors that are reddish in there, but red really pops in here on the heart alone. White is usually about holiness or divinity. Brown was one of those colors that I had a tougher time getting a feel on, what it actually meant. And the one that I gravitated the most to, and you can do your own research, see if you agree, was to remind you of monks. And monks wear brown habits, and as a way to renounce our worldly self. And I don't remember what the yellow stands for. I'll interject that and peek. That's this window called love. The second one has an anchor. And the reason that there's an anchor is there's a Bible verse in Hebrews that says, hope is the anchor of my soul. And so anchors quickly became a symbol for hope. It also ties to, the fishermen and the fishers of men narrative that we have with Jesus as well. But and the way that they design anchors, usually in stained glass, is it kind of looks like a cross at the top. It's a definite P, which is that chi rho. Well, it's the rho of the name for Jesus in Greek, and so again, it's kind of a reminder of Jesus and as our hope. Was that what the designer was going for? I think so, but again, without having them specifically there, it's hard to tell. But this window is called hope. So, but was he or she also thinking about Jesus in that? I'm not sure. This one, so you've got a dove. The dove is carrying a branch, which kind of goes back to the Noah story. Remember when Noah releases the dove comes back with an olive branch. And so doves have always been a symbol of peace or rest in the Bible. And there is a psalm that says, give my heart rest like a dove, or something like that. Psalm 55 or 56, I can't remember which. So this window is also called peace. And when you see a dove, usually that it's taught, the Holy Spirit or peace. This one is called faith. That's what the author or the designer named it, was faith. And if you'll notice, the cross is red with white, maybe sunlight or sun rays or something come out of the center there. And if you interpret red as a color of blood and sacrifice and love, it all real ties into our story of the cross and of Jesus' sacrifice for us. So this is what we have faith in, that Jesus died on the cross for us. And that's why the cross is colored red. And the last one is entitled Word. Bible, being the Word of God, the cross kind of propping up the Word of God, giving it that extra. Again, that's what the last window in the chapel is looked at. So now we're going to move over to the sanctuary. Actually, no, I'm going to show you one more set of windows that are up leading out to our memorial garden and talk about them. So this is the door that leads out to our memorial garden. And I always think of it kind of as a hidden gem, that because it's up and beyond the sanctuary, not a lot of people get to see it, but it's a beautiful window that I'm really proud of, and I hope you are too. So I didn't zoom in on all of the pieces, but I did on one particular one, the top left corner, and I'll come back to the whole. But if you look in the top left corner here in the center, you've got loaves and fishes to remind you of that, the feeding of the 5,000. You've got two birds in a nest. Not sure. I think it's two turtle doves to remind us of the countdown to Epiphany, the 12 days of Christmas. Maybe, maybe not. You can decide for yourself. But if you look at the very top left, you've got a miner's helmet. And that's another interesting thing that I wanted to add too, is that it is okay, and people would regularly include little nods or little reminders of the history of the particular church or the particular community that they were in as well. So that's a very much a part of stained glass, and I'm glad we have that little miner's helmet to remind us. We've got a saw and an axe below the two turtle doves. It reminds me, I'm speculating on what the author or the creator thought of these, so you can do with that as you please. I think it's for building, like we're going to build up the church. Below it, you've got the cry on the cross. You've got taves of wheat. The harvest is here, maybe. You've got 5 jugs and 2 rings. 2 rings would be like at a wedding. 5 jugs would be the jugs at the story from John chapter 2, where Jesus changes the water to wine in the wedding. You've got 3 crosses there, the crucifix and a lightning bolt there to, as Jesus died, the earthquake and stuff happened. So maybe that's where that lightning bolt's for. You've got a miner's pick. I'm guessing that also goes with mining. And below that, you've got the Templar cross with palm branches and maybe an empty tomb. I'm thinking it's more of a Palm Sunday kind of victory feeling to it. The march in celebrating the power of Jesus with lightning bolts and the power of the church, Knight Templar. I don't know. Those are interpretation, but I think that's what the author is trying to go for. So in our sanctuary, we have 12 long, skinny windows, and it was really, really hard to get a good shot of the windows because I'm looking up from an angle, but hopefully you'll be able to see and at least get what each of them mean. There are 2 on a page, so I will kind of go, I'll start on the right and keep working my way to the left. And the one that's on the far right is at the furthest forward in the church as well, in the sanctuary. And it's got 2 crossed keys. And when you see 2 keys, that always means Peter. The verse in Matthew where Jesus says, I will give you the keys of heaven, and you become Peter. He changed his name from Simon, started calling him Peter. Crossed keys are always the symbol of Peter. And that is the symbol of the popes today as well. The Catholic Church believes Peter was the first pope in a long line of popes. And so all popes after also have the symbol of the crossed keys to represent their connection back to Peter, who is the rock that the church was built on. The next one over has a big red X. And I should say, on these particular pictures, you can't read it, but at the bottom it also says who the saint is, who the disciple is underneath. This one is Saint Andrew. And Saint Andrew has a cross because, as the story goes, Saint Andrew was crucified. And when he was time to be killed, Saint Andrew refused to be crucified on a cross like his Lord, and asked them to crucify him on a X made out of wood. And so when you see a red X or a cross that's kind of on its side like that, that always means Saint Andrew. The next 2, starting from the left, and you maybe be able to see the names at the bottom of these, but the next one over has 3 scallop shells or clam shells. When you see scallop shells, it is always, always, always St. James the Greater, St. James the Apostle of Jesus, St. James, who's the church believes is buried in Spain. Fun fact for you, there are only 3 tombs for the 12 apostles. St. Peter is buried in St. Peter's Basilica. St. James is buried in Santiago de Compostela in Spain, and St. Thomas is buried in southern India, where he did some missionary work. I will come back and talk about why, in depth if you want, St. James has the scallop shells, but it goes to his death, and so stay tuned if you want to hear more about that. The next one over is a cup, and inside of that cup is a snake kind of sitting in the cup. And that goes for St. John. The story goes that John was given a cup, and in that cup was poison. And somehow John knew, and because he had faith that God would save him, he drank it anyway. And before the poison could hurt him, the poison turned into a snake. And so when you see a cup and snake like that, it always means St. John. Next 2 over, we've got a cross with 2 bags of wheat maybe, or loaves of bread. This is St. Philip. In the feeding of the 5,000 in the story from John, St. Philip says, Lord, what are we going to feed them? And so that question has been stuck to him forever. And when you see 2 bags of wheat like that, it means St. Philip. St. Jude is an interesting one because he doesn't get a lot of ink in the Bible, but he was kind of always an assistant, always going out on missionary journeys with others. And so the boat signifies his willingness to go out and to bring the gospel message out to the world. And so when you see a boat, that usually means St. Jude. Next to the saw is for St. James the Lesser. And this is where some of the Bible stories get a little gruesome. St. James was martyred for Jesus, and it's reported that he was martyred by being cut up into pieces. And so when you see a saw, you can think of the way that St. James the Lesser met his demise. Next one over has 3 sacks. They're actually coins, sacks of coins. And that goes for St. Matthew. St. Matthew is one of the followers of Jesus. He was one of the tax collectors. So when you see bags of coins, it's always St. James. Next ones on the right, as I'm looking at the screen, is St. Thomas. St. Thomas has the square, a builder's tool, to represent his missionary work that he did in India. It is believed that Thomas sailed to India after Jesus died and started a church down there, and they draw their history right back to St. Thomas. And then the thing that kind of intersects with the square is a spear, because that's how St. Thomas was killed. St. Bartholomew has 3 skinning knives, and the cheery part is St. Bartholomew is the patron saint of leather workers, of skinners, and so that's why he has those. But the reason he's the patron saint of leather workers and of skinners is because when he was killed, he was skinned alive. And so you'll usually see 3 knives to represent St. Bartholomew. Sometimes you'll see a body without any skin on it, just a red, muscly kind of picture, and that also means St. Bartholomew. Last 2 of the 12 disciples is we've got a book with a fish on top, and that is to represent St. Simon. Simon, not Peter, but St. Simon was someone that went out and preached the word, was making fishers of men. So often you'll see a book and a fish kind of stuck together, and that's to represent St. Simon. The last one is for St. Matthias. And you'll notice Judas did not get his own window. I don't know of many, if any, churches have windows that tell Judas's story. Matthias is the one that replaced Judas after he died, and he always has a Bible and a battle axe. And the Bible, because he was taking the word out, he was a missionary. The battle axe, because that's how he died, is he was beheaded. And so when you see either a statue or a painting or a stained glass with someone with a battle axe, oftentimes it's supposed to be Matthias. Now in the back of the sanctuary, we've got a great big window, all in blues with yellows, and kind of 3 main pictures there. And if you can see, there's lots of different stars and along the way too, including the Jewish star, the Star of David, which I really like that we have that nod to remember our connection to our Jewish brothers and sisters, and the Abrahamic faith as part of our faith too. The yellow, like I said before, is always glory and power, and so you see that it's right around the symbols where it's God's hand coming out or the dove coming down. That's God's glory, God's power showing down onto the earth, onto the people that are walking into the church. Blue, it's tons of blue in that picture. Blue is a color of hope. And so, it's fitting that we have all that blue in there to give us hope while we're worshiping. And the fish, the yellow fish, the Greek around it is ichthus, which is just the Greek word for fish. So again, that we are called to be fishers of people and to go out. Why there's a big yellow ribbon along the top, and I don't know. It may just have been artistic design. There may be some other symbolism there. And that's the fun thing about stained glass, is you never know what it's all supposed to mean. So if you pause here, thank you so much. If you stick around, I will go into depth about the story of St. James and why St. James has the clamshells. For those that stuck around to hear more about St. James, thank you. I'm going to talk about why St. James is always associated with the scallop shell. And if you really, really, really want to dig into St. James and the Camino de Santiago, the way of St. James, and the pilgrimage that's still happening, which I did this past spring, I have a video on my YouTube channel that's almost 90 minutes long of my walk and the history of St. James and stuff too. So if you're really digging into the history, I'd encourage you to check that out. But the St. James we're talking about is one of the close friends of Jesus. Peter, James, and John. It's that James, the James that was always there at the most intimate moments of Jesus. And part of his story is in the Bible. It is 100% in the Bible. Part of his story, as we get farther and farther away, becomes a little more tradition. And when I say tradition, I mean it's not in the Bible, but we have writings that people might have talked about the stories of St. James after Jesus, or we have people talking about stories that we've lost about St. James too. So that's where some of the tradition of James comes from, and you've got to make your own decision since it's not in the Bible, believe it or not. So after Jesus left, James went out and went to Spain, as the tradition goes, and went out there to preach and to teach. And what we believe is that he went to a town called Padron, and in Padron he tied up his boat to a Roman temple stone, and then went out and started preaching. And that Roman temple stone is still in a chapel in Padron, and the picture on the right is the stone, as we believe, that was tied to. And sometimes you can see it, sometimes you can't. The one on the left was in somebody's yard that I went by, that they had kind of set up the scene of that. So when James went, he climbed up a mountain. This is a shrine where we believe James did his preaching and his teaching. It kind of overlooks the space where he would have set up. And I got to go up there. Those are scallops, the little white on the bottom there. And a pilgrim walks up these steps. These steps were built in like the 14th, 15th century. There's, I don't remember how many hundreds of steps there are. And tradition was that a pilgrim would walk up the steps on their knees and say a prayer, and it would take them a long time. It was very physically demanding. I can tell you it was all I could do to climb up the stairs. It's after James went to Spain and preached, he got a call from Mary, a vision from Mary, and said, hurry back to Jerusalem. When he was back into Jerusalem, King Herod got words that he was there, and he was put to death by the sword. And you can read that in Acts 12. That's still in there. And James was the first of the 12 to be martyred for Jesus, to be killed for Jesus. So after James died, a tradition has it that his disciples took him by boat back to where he was preaching in Spain, or they put his body in a boat by itself, and the boat sailed itself up to Spain. Those are the two kind of traditions there. And when his body arrived, especially if you use the one where he sailed it by himself, his body was covered in scallop shells. And it was found by a monk who buried him in secret, and that's where he remained for a while. So you'll see stained glass and stuff with the traveler bag, the wineskin, and a scallop shell always represent St. James. Now, and here's a couple more pictures. The chapel in the center is in the shape of a scallop shell. It is dedicated to St. James. I don't remember what city it was in. And then the picture on the right was my backpack. All pilgrims today carry the scallop shell to remind them who they're going to see and that they're pilgrims on a journey. So again, as legend goes, in the late, we'll say 9th, 10th century, somewhere in there, the Moors, the Muslims, were pushing up through Africa and into Spain, and they were conquering everything along the way, and Spain was in dire straits. And as the legend goes, James appeared at the final battle, and he appeared on a charger carrying a flag, and he vanquished the Moors back and pushed them back, and they were not able to conquer any further. And so you see the flag there. That is the cross of St. James, and that's always associated with him too. I'm not sure which came first anymore. If the queen at the time found the tomb of St. James, and then later the Moors came, or if she found it after he pushed back the Moors. But either way, a monk went to the queen, said, "Hey, I've in a vision, I saw this field of stars. In the field of stars, I saw the tomb of St. James." And so they found him, and they created a church around where St. James is, and that's the church of Santiago, St. James, de Compostela, the field of stars. And inside of the church, both are the symbols of James the Pilgrim and James Metamora, James the Moor Slayer. So he is the patron saint of Spain because of the way he was able to vanquish the Moors back and send them packing back. So in the 12th century, there was a pope named Pope Calixtus II. So this is maybe another 100, 200 years after St. James pushed the Moors back. Pope Calixtus wrote a book, a codex, and in that book he had a guide for pilgrims to go see the tomb of St. James. And it just kind of took a life of its own. It really became an important part of the church. Priests would, as penance for sins, would have people walk to the tomb of St. James from wherever they lived, and you would only carry the clothes on your back and a water skin and your walking stick. And you had to rely on the kindness of strangers to get you there. And the church ended up establishing this huge network of hospitals and places to stay and to cater and take care of the pilgrims. And people are still walking to the tomb of St. James today. This is kind of some of the maps that are out there, different routes that you can go to the tomb. I walked the Portuguese central route from Porto there up to Santiago. It was about 250 kilometers or about 150 miles. And along the way, you will see pilgrims walking as well, and the pilgrims always have that scallop shell. Again, back to that legend or that tradition that St. James had covered his body in scallop shells when he came to Spain. So that's why the scallop shell is always tied to St. James. And again, if you are really digging this and you want to dig in deep to the walk or to the history, like I said, I have got a YouTube video that's almost 90 minutes long that'll talk about it. So thanks for sticking around. I appreciate it and hope you've been blessed by this video. Take care, my friends.